Hey guys, it's me again, Eric here at Mountaintop 9, and tonight we're gonna do my top 5 horror films of 1982. Now, this is another tough year to narrow shit down, let me tell you, and I want to set the ground rules right away, just like I did the last couple times. I am not going to name every single horror film from this year, because if I did that, I would be here all fucking night. Plus, I mean, how would you guys have any fun in the comment section if I named every damn movie? I gotta leave some picks for you guys as well. So, I just, kind of did my best to just try to just really hone in on 5 titles that I thought were totally indispensable, ones that I really think measure up to the highest standard in a number of different aspects, as whether it be gore or atmosphere or what have you. You know, the thing about the early 80s for me that makes it so special is that was part of the slasher boom, you know? I love slasher flicks, and I love gore flicks in general, and it was just such a great time period to just go back and look at and just bask in all of the horrific, gory, atmospheric goodness that was on display, because there is just so much quality material, and 1982 is just overflowing with great shit. But I've done enough rambling, so let's start with my number 5 choice. My number 5 is Xtro. Now, I want to start off talking about Xtro by pointing out that I am not a sci-fi fan. I'm not a big science fiction type person. You know, the only science fiction stuff I like is when it's really flavored with copious amounts of either gore or slimy monster effects, or it has to really be dripping with dark atmosphere and weirdness. Well, Xtro has stuff like that in abundance. It's a very weird film, it's very offbeat, plus it has some good gore scenes, and it just has a very grim, nihilistic tone to it that I just can't get enough of. I mean, you have classic scenes in this movie, like the part where the woman gives birth to a full-grown man. That scene is just so grotesque, with the way her stomach just swells up like it's 5 feet tall. I mean, this shit is just insane. But then you also have really cool monster makeup, like when you see the alien creature right there next to the side of the road, and it almost looks like he's walking like a fucking crab or something. It's a really unique design on this thing, and he just looks positively hideous. Why those people driving down the damn road, you know, they passed this creature. They should have just kept going, but for some reason the dipshit driving the car, he thinks it's a good idea to pull over the fucking car and go back and check out and see what the hell that thing was. I don't know about you, but if I saw some shit like that standing next to the side of the road, I'd get the fuck out of Dodge. That is absolutely insane, and that guy definitely pays the price. Let me tell you right now. Of course, this movie is about a guy. He's a family guy. He's got a wife and a son. And one day at the beginning of the movie, he's outside with his son, and he ends up getting abducted by aliens. The dad does. In a flash of light, some kind of spacecraft comes down and abducts him. Well, he comes back 3 years later, and when he does, he's like been taken over by whatever type of alien life form it was that took him up into space. He's changed now. You know, he has mental powers. He can manipulate objects around him. When he passes on this ability to his young son, his son suddenly starts bringing his toys to life. He brings like clowns to life, and they're playing with fucking yo-yos in his room and dancing around. It's just really weird stuff. And it's got to be said right now that Xtro has great replay value. I've watched this movie a few times over the years, and it never gets old. It's very unique. You know, these odd little touches in the movie just take it up a notch, in my opinion. The director of this film, Harry Davenport, he did a damn fine job, because he not only handled the directorial responsibilities, but he also did the score for this movie. Kind of like how John Carpenter always liked to, you know, multitask in that fashion. So I really appreciate that as well. He comes up with some really nice synthesizer notes for this movie, and I think that that really caps the movie off in a great way. Because think about it, it's an early 80s horror film. Synthesizers go along with that like peanut butter and chocolate. So you can't ask for a better combination in that regard. But also, since it's an alien type movie, you know, we've got outer space shenanigans, we've got some sci-fi touches. Synthesizer notes go perfectly with that as well because they kind of channel that otherworldly atmosphere. So Xtro is my number 5, and it's a damn fine film, so you better watch it if you haven't checked it out yet. My number 4 is a little gore film called Pieces, and it's just like the first time you laid your eyes on that poster art. It's just like the taglines say. It's exactly what you fucking think it is. You don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre, my friends, and this movie lives up to the hype. You read those taglines, you look at that poster art, and you think this movie better not be jerking me around, and guess what? You hit play on this bad boy and it lives up to it. It blows your fucking mind. The very beginning, I mean, just like in a movie like Nightmare, you know how young George Tatum, you know, he takes that axe and he kills his dad and the dad's mistress. Well, Pieces starts with the same type of thing. You see this little boy and he's putting together a puzzle up in his room. Well, it turns out that this puzzle he's putting together is of a naked woman. Now, when his mother comes into the room, she does not take kindly at all to this kind of perversion. She is very sickened that her son is messing about with such filthy crap. So she throws a big fit and she says how she's gonna burn every goddamn thing in his room, and she starts searching through all of his belongings. And she tells her son to go get a bag so she can start bagging up all the trash in his room. Well, as it turns out, he returns to the room all right, but when he comes back in there, he's armed with an axe, and he starts taking that axe right to his mother's head. Then he even starts sawing off her limbs. He even gets out a fucking saw and starts dismembering her right there in his bedroom. I love the scene where they open the closet door and you see her decapitated head sitting in there and you see the blood flowing out from underneath it. It's just really grisly. Now, is this movie as disturbing as a film like Nightmare or Maniac? No, not at all. Because even though Pieces is very bloody, you know, this movie doesn't shy away from throwing the blood all over the place. And it keeps the murders coming at a nice pace. This movie never seems to drag. The director really knew how to pace things out and keep the audience interested. But even though you have all this gore and all these exploitative elements, it's not a disturbing movie. There's not a depressing, grimy vibe about it. You know, the dubbing in it, the way the actors carry themselves, and just the ridiculousness of the plot in general, it just really kind of adds, there's quite a bit of levity to this movie. This is the type of movie you can watch with some friends and just have a good time, you know, have a few laughs. It doesn't take itself real seriously. This movie has some great cheesy dialogue in it, like the part where you see the students commiserating in the hallway there on campus, and one of the girls is talking about how there's nothing better than smoking pot and fucking on a waterbed. That's the kind of dialogue you get in this film, you know what I mean? So that makes you, you know, that gives you a good laugh right there. And then the gore scenes, let's not stray too far from that, okay? Let's get back to that for a second. You have chainsaws slicing heads clear the fuck off. There are chainsaw scenes where bodies get cut right in half, and then you see the internal organs strewn about the floor and blood all over the damn place. So it's just a very bloody, visceral type film. This movie also has the added benefit of Christopher George. Now, if you have watched Gates of Hell or Mortuary, you know what I'm talking about. This guy just brings a great, warm presence. Whenever he's in one of these horror films, I just love it. So to sum up my feeling on Pieces, it's a movie that just has a certain level of notoriety for a reason. It's a lot of fun, it lays on the gore pretty thick, And, you know, you can't help but chuckle at some of the scenes in this movie. It's so bad it's good. Pieces isn't a great movie, but it deserves to be on this list simply because it has so many positive attributes. And when you roll them all into one nice, concise ball, you'll see that it's just this tasty nugget that you want to return to time and time again. My number 3 is Basket Case, and I still remember watching this movie for the first time on Saturday Nightmares on USA when I was just a kid in the 80s, and what really got to me was the downbeat ending of this movie. I'm not going to spoil it if you've never seen this film, and I also got to say, if you're watching my videos and you haven't seen Basket Case, man, come on. You gotta check it out immediately because it's one of those movies that you just have to watch. Anybody who's a horror fan, you've got to watch Basket Case at least once. First of all, let's just talk about Belial, the hideous monster that resides inside the basket that Dwayne carries around. Of course, we all know that it's the severed Siamese twin that came off of the side of his brother's torso, and this thing is grotesque to the extreme. He's just an ugly creature, and for some reason, he just loves to tear people apart. Now, I know that this thing wants to get revenge on the doctors that separated him and his brother. That's perfectly understandable, but it's not just that. Belial is a sick son of a bitch in general. He will kill and rip to shreds anybody who dares fuck with him, alright? And he won't let his brother be. You know, there's this really cute blonde girl that takes a liking to Dwayne. And you know, Dwayne has it bad enough that he has to take care of his hideous, monstrous brother. You know, he doesn't have much of a life because he has to carry him around in a fucking basket all the time. Well, he would just like a normal life. You know, he's got all of his wits about him, so he would like to, you know, go out and maybe meet a girl, you know, and have a good time. But do you think Belial lets him have some fun? Fuck no. As soon as Dwayne starts kissing this beautiful woman, Belial starts sending him all kinds of, you know, psychic messages into his brain. He can just get inside his brother's brain and fuck with him and, you know, distract him so that his brother can't get laid. So that part really pisses me off. That's the one thing about Basket Case that really irritates me, is the fact that Belial will not let his brother get laid. I don't think that's right. Do you think that's right? If you had a brother and he was out and he was trying to, you know, have a nice bout of sex with some hot chick, would you try to cock block him? Would you try to distract him from that? No, you'd leave your fucking brother alone. You'd mind your own goddamn business. Well, that's not the way Belial is. He wants to fuck his brother's life up. It's all about Belial. You've got to, you know, his brother has to cater to Belial's every need, the little fucking prick. Another thing that bothers me about Belial's little bitch ass is the fact that he sits in that goddamn basket and his brother will bring him back entire packages of hot dogs, alright? Not only that, he'll bring him entire bags of burgers and just dump the whole thing in, and Belial is a pig. You hear all these nasty sounds as he eats the food like a fucking hog. So anyway, let's stop talking about that so much and let's get into some of the real positive attributes of this film. I like the creature design. Like I said, Belial is appropriately disgusting. Second of all, this movie throws the blood around very well. You have some nice murder scenes in this. Belial rips people apart. He's a goddamn animal, so you've got plenty of blood, plenty of gore. You know, the only part in this movie that I don't like is when that bitch has all of those scalpels in her face and she's standing there and she lets out that god-awful scream. I can't stand that part, man. It gives me douche chills like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I just can't stand that part. Just so off-putting. I wish that part would have been excised or they would have done that a little bit differently. But man, Basket Case is a classic. So, let's move on. My number 2 is Tenebrae from the legendary Dario Argento. And this might be one of my favorite Argento films in general. Along with Phenomena, this movie is just upper echelon shit. The score is just fantastic to this movie. It's very pulsing. It just has a great feel to it. As soon as this movie starts, that's the first thing that hits you, is the score. So I just love it. It's very driving, very atmospheric. Also in this film, Argento is really just delivering the showboating, cinematography, just the camera sweeps in this movie, like during the different murder sequences. For instance, that one scene where the two women are inside the building, they share an apartment together, and the way the camera is outside moving around and looking through the different windows, just that whole scene, the way it's pulled off, along with the music, along with that driving, pulsing music, this movie just really captures your imagination. I love how this one, it really kind of looks kind of like a Columbo episode, just the warm colors, and I think that Argento even said that he was going for something along those lines. He wanted that kind of look. I think that was a very interesting choice, and I think it's appropriate for what this movie's about, because you have this writer, he's on a book tour, and while he's doing the rounds, there's also a murderer that's dispatching beautiful women one by one, and you have a detective that's on the scene, and he's trying to figure out what the fuck's going on, and he's questioning the writer. I like the way this movie builds. I like the different twists and turns that it has. You know, this movie has some nice surprises in store. And as far as the murder set pieces are concerned, Argento delivers big time. I mean, who can forget that jaw-dropping scene where the axe comes crashing through the window and chops off that woman's arm, and then she paints that white wall red as the blood just comes pumping out of her stump. It's just such a grisly sequence. As far as 1982 is concerned, Tenebrae is my number 2 pick. Alright guys, are you ready for my number 1 horror film of 1982? Alright, well I'll tell it to you. And it shouldn't be a fucking surprise. If you've been watching my channel long enough, you should know what it is. It's the legendary masterpiece from George Romero called Creepshow. Creepshow is not only my number 1 horror film of 1982, but it's my favorite horror film of all time. This movie is the movie that made me a horror fanatic. It's the movie that changed my life. I've probably talked about this before in other videos. I know when I did a Creepshow horror movie douchebag review for it, I talked about this. But when I was very, very young, I remember waking up at like 3 in the morning. It was 3 in the morning. It was still dark outside, and my grandma was in the living room taping a horror flick. Well, when I walked into the room, it was the sequence of Something to Tide You Over. You know, the part where Ted Danson and Galen Ross, you know, the two characters, you know, the lovers that drowned. You know how Leslie Nielsen buried them up to their fucking neck, and then they drowned, and then they come back, and they're covered in seaweed, and they're all rotted, and they're blue and green looking. They're just really fucking nasty. Well, then they come back to get their revenge against the Leslie Nielsen character. Well, that's the scene that I saw when I was about, I was probably 3 years old. It's one of my earliest memories, but I was transfixed by what I saw happening on that screen, okay? That sequence, it did something to me. It flipped a switch in my brain. Kind of the way also when I would see Mountaintop Motel Massacre. That movie I watched not long after, and it did the same thing. There's something about those earliest horror films that we watch when we're children, okay? Those ones that we watch first. Alright? And if they're the right horror film, if they have a certain air about them, if they have a certain otherworldly charm, there's something about them that can get into our childish minds, okay? Our imaginations are so free-floating and just limitless at that time. So when you have something like that enter your brain, alright, it gets in there and it does something to you. It changes you. And that's what Creepshow did to me. What Stephen King and George Romero and also Tom Savini on the makeup effects, what they did crafting this film, as well as Michael Gornick, the cinematographer, you know, just so much talent went into creating this masterpiece. But you guys have heard me talk about Creepshow so many times before. You know that sequence where Nathan Grantham comes out of the ground, alright, when his hand shoots up, and the way that John Harrison synthesizer score just hits the right mark and just sends you into the rafters when you hear that jolting sound. Father's Day sets the perfect tone for the film as far as I'm concerned. That first story, that one always creeped me out because Nathan is a scary fucking zombie. You know, he just has that rotting, putrescent look. He just has such a great quality to him, and I've always thought that was frightening. If you were in a house by yourself and that thing was out there, that's pretty freaky, and so is the crate. Great story, something to tide you over. They're creeping up on you, you know, with all the roaches. Creepshow is just something else. And then the thing that just, the cherry on top of the entire Sunday is John Harrison's remarkable score. I think it's the greatest horror film score of all time. Creepshow is undoubtedly my #1 for 1982, and why this movie didn't do better upon initial release. It seemed like everyone had such unrealistic expectations that even though this film is fan-fucking-tastic, people were still disappointed with it at the time. You know, even though it was featured in a lot of Fangoria issues and it had promotion and whatnot as far as that was concerned, the movie just never seemed to take off at the time. Alright? And while I was a kid, when I would read movie review books, lots of times, instead of giving it the 4 stars that it deserves, I would read stupid review books and they'd only give it 2.5 stars. And these same books would give Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Evil Dead, they'd give them 3.5, 4 stars. Well, I was thinking, well, Creepshow's just as much of a fantastic classic horror film as those. What's wrong with these people? But it's funny because I think my generation, I think people that are my age in their mid-30s and younger, I think that we are much more appreciative of Creepshow than a lot of the people that were going to see the movie initially, right there at the time. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that loved it then, but I'm talking, you know, criticism-wise, the movie did not get as many accolades as it should have. And that's too damn bad because the movie is a masterpiece. It always should have been held in high regard. And Creepshow 2 is a fantastic follow-up, and I'll get to that once we get to 1987. But anyway, Creepshow is my #1. Alright, my friends, now it's time to get into my honorable mentions. And the first one I want to mention is a superb slasher film called Unhinged. It has really good atmosphere. That's the thing about a movie like Unhinged. It's not going to blow you away with a ton of non-stop action as far as, you know, it's not paced out like a movie like Pieces where the kills just keep coming. It's not like that. Unhinged is a slow burn horror film. It takes time to set up the atmosphere. It's a very isolated atmosphere. You're out there in the middle of nowhere, alright? In this big mansion surrounded by a vast forest, and it just seems like the characters in this movie are cut off from the outside world. This is the kind of slasher that you can put on at 1 or 2 in the morning and it kind of gets under your skin. The score is really good. It's synthesizer goodness, as a true slasher score should be. I mean, because let's face it, if it's a slasher film from the early 1980s, it better have a synthesizer score, and if it doesn't, it better make up for the fact that it doesn't in some other extravagant ways, because as far as I'm concerned, like I've said before, a synthesizer score is where it's at. For a slasher movie, they just go hand in hand. There's just an otherworldly, just a macabre type feeling that you get when you hear those synthesizer notes and you see it say Unhinged over that black backdrop. You know that you're in for something really good. This movie takes its time, but I feel like the payoff is worth it, you know, just the atmosphere, just sit and let that wash over you. The score, the isolated setting, and then the grisly payoff. This movie has a really cool twist at the end. Another movie that I love to bloody bits is called Honeymoon Horror. And like Unhinged, it's another, what the elitist critics would call a regional horror film. That's the kind of terminology that you'll see in like horror film books, you know, criticism books. You'll see them call films like Honeymoon Horror and Unhinged, they call those regional horror flicks. I guess if a movie isn't automatically made in Los Angeles, you know, if it isn't made in Hollywood or something, then that means it's a regional horror film, whatever the fuck. Who the fuck cares? I'll tell you what, if that's what they are, regional horror films, I love them. The fact is that regional horror films often really deliver the goods because they feel authentic and they feel rustic. Alright? And that's what I like about Honeymoon Horror. Just like Unhinged, it has that nice rustic, lived-in type feeling. You feel like these settings are real. Once again, in this movie, it's the same old slasher trope that works so well, and that's why slashers would reuse these type cliches. It's because they work. You get the cast of characters, you put them in an isolated setting, and you let them get picked off one by one while they stand around and fucking wonder, who the hell is killing us? In Honeymoon Horror, you have these newlyweds, they're on this shitty little island. They just got married, so they want to go to their room, they want to have some hot sex, and then after they have a nice bout of fucking, they want to eat, you know, some steak and potatoes, you know, have a nice dinner together, whatever people do when they first get married. But instead of these characters getting to have a nice night of sex, they find out that there's a maniac on the loose on this damn island, and, you know, he's up to some bloody business. He's killing them, and so they have to figure out who the hell is doing this. I like the cheap, bloody makeup effects. They're cheap, but they're effective. It's really crude stuff, and I like that. Also, the score is really well done. The score to this movie is done by the same talented man that did the score to the legendary Mountaintop Motel Massacre, so that's another positive attribute of the film. And yeah, man, these two go together so damn well. Honeymoon Horror and Unhinged, two unsung slashers, in my opinion, that I think really deserve their time to shine. Anybody who really loves and delves deep into the underbelly of the slasher film, I think you can find some really cool things to appreciate about both of these films. Another honorable mention is Lucio Fulci's The New York Ripper. Now, the thing about this movie is the makeup effects are very strong. Who can forget the 6 sadistic scenes in this film where a razor blade cuts right through an eyeball? I'm telling you, that scene right there, I think that's just as grisly as the legendary splinter through the eye scene in Zombie. If you're squeamish at all, then there is stuff in the New York Ripper that will really make your stomach turn. I mean, because I still remember when I was a kid going into a West Coast Video and picking up the VHS of the New York Ripper off the shelf and turning it around and looking on the back, and it shows a picture of one of the mutilated victims on the back of the box. And as a kid, I was like, holy shit, this movie looks sick. And it just really is. As far as the violence is concerned, the New York Ripper is very depraved. I love the hardcore, violent tone of the New York Ripper. That's not a problem at all. What really kind of takes this movie down a notch, in my opinion, is the fact that it's just kind of boring. I think that the New York Ripper just drags. I think the pacing is rather sluggish. That's basically it in a nutshell. I'm also not a big fan of the score to this movie. I don't like the score at all. I like the grimy, city setting of this movie. It's very sleazy. It fits really well with the tone. I love all of that. The cinematography is beautiful, but the movie is just very sluggish. It's just very slow. And it's one that, I've put on frequently in the past, and sometimes I can't make it through the whole thing. I'll just fall asleep on this film. It's not as engaging as a movie like House by the Cemetery, for instance, or City of the Living Dead, or The Beyond, or Zombie. All of those are just paced much better than New York Ripper. So, yeah, New York Ripper has some really good things going for it. The tone is just, man, it's just off the charts brutal. But it's just too boring in my opinion, and I'm not a big fan of the score. Another honorable mention is Amityville 2, The Possession. This movie is so sick and depraved. Just the fact that in this movie, alright, as soon as this family gets to the Amityville house, they already have problems. You know how the brother and the sister have sex in this movie? It's really sick, and you gotta wonder what made them want to go in that direction in the film, because it just takes you by surprise the first time you see the movie. You're like, holy shit, this movie's really going to that level of depravity. The funny thing is as soon as these people get in the Amityville house, before the house even has time to influence them, you already feel awkward watching these characters, because that brother and sister look like they're flirting with each other from the fucking moment they get in the place. Eventually the brother gets a shotgun and he mows them all down one after another, because the demons in the house, they possess him. And there's some really good makeup effects in this movie. It's got that going for it. It's the Amityville 2. It's got a nice, horrific tone. It's very, very dark in nature. This is a hopeless movie. It's got that. It's got some good makeup. The score is pretty damn good. It's not great or anything, but it sets the right level of unease. And this is definitely one of the best Amityville movies. I'm a big fan of the Amityville movies. In particular, the sequels. I like stuff like Amityville 2, The Possession, and I also like the later movies that came out in the 90s, like Amityville Dollhouse is fun. It's just good, cheesy fun. I also like Amityville 1992, It's About Time. Just the other night, I also watched Amityville, The New Generation. There are just some really... They're just fun in a cheesy way. But getting back to The Possession, this one really just strikes the right tone. I can see where this one might be a little bit off-putting to a mainstream audience because it's so bleak. But moving on, another movie we have to touch on is Friday the 13th Part 3. Now, I could never put Friday the 13th Part 3 up in my top 5. I just can't, because in my opinion, it's not a great movie. There are things I love about this movie. I mean, in my heart, this is a classic movie. It's just nothing that I would rank up at the top for 1982, you know what I mean? I love the way Jason looks in this movie without his mask. I feel like Friday the 13th Part 3, just like Part 2 and 4, the early ones tried to milk some suspense. They tried to keep you uneasy. They weren't showing Jason nonstop like they do Part 6 and onwards. Once he's a walking zombie, once he returns from the dead and he's indestructible and everything, then the camera shows you him from the jump. He's the star of the movie. But in these early ones, they try to keep him in the shadows just a little bit. They try to make you fucking tense up and wonder when he's going to pop out. And Part 3 does that rather well. It's kind of sad how the director, Steve Miner, he just doesn't seem to give two fucks about Friday the 13th Part 2 or 3. It's a shame that he doesn't do commentary tracks for these movies. I'd love to hear from Steve Miner. I'd love to hear him do a commentary track for Friday Part 3 and for Friday Part 2. He directed the damn movies, and I think he did a good fucking job, so I'd love to hear about it from him. I'm a big fan of commentary tracks for movies that are classics to me, or movies that I'm really curious about, so that's a damn shame. I mean, let's face it, the Friday the 13th movies and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, to a person from my generation, a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, these were our Frankenstein and Dracula and all that shit. That's what Freddy and Jason were to, someone like me. Now moving on to another movie that gets a lot of attention because it's a sequel in a famous franchise. Let's mention Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This movie has some really cool aspects, but I gotta tell you, I think Halloween 3 in recent years is starting to get a little bit overrated. I'm a little bit tired of people acting like it's the greatest thing ever just because it's the one without Michael Myers. Is it a great film? In my opinion, no, it's not a great film, okay? I think it's a very good film, but it's not great. It's not great. Some people are trying to say it's great just because in its initial run, back in the early days, the movie didn't do well because people were expecting Michael Myers. Well, now I feel like fans are trying to overcompensate for that. They're trying to make up for that fact, all right? And make it out to be a better movie than it is. It's a good movie, but it's not great. If you guys want to see a really cool horror action hybrid, check out a movie with Chuck Norris called Silent Rage. I really like this one, man, ever since I was a kid. The opening of this movie is very disturbing because you have this guy and he's at home with his family and you hear him on the phone with like his therapist or something, but he's on the phone and he's saying, I'm losing it. I'm losing it, okay? And you pretty quickly get the idea that this is an unstable individual and his mind is about to go bonkers and he's about to freak the fuck out and slaughter his family. And sure enough, that's what this bastard does. He goes out to a shed or something, he comes back in with an axe and he goes apeshit. And that really freaked me out when I was a kid. Just the idea that someone would just suddenly, that their mind would just suddenly be lost. It would just suddenly just fracture, and all of a sudden they're just totally unbridled with insanity and the fact that they would be set upon someone with a razor sharp axe, someone in their own family. That just disturbed me when I was a kid. And this movie has a disturbing, unique score to it. The score to this movie is really standout shit. I always like a score that's not your typical thing. There's some really unique sounds to this score, and the composer, he's got to get a ton of credit because he came up with one that really stands out from the pack. So Silent Rage is one that I highly recommend. Another honorable mention is The Dorm That Dripped Blood. Now, this movie is very flawed in my opinion. I think at times it can be rather boring, alright? I don't think it's always paced that well. Also, I'm not a big fan of the score to this movie. I think it's very overwrought, like at the beginning, just the way the score comes in at the very beginning and during the title sequence. It's just a little bit too over the top and cheesy sounding. So the score and the pacing kind of holds this movie back and keeps it from being a great slasher flick. I like the dark setting. I like the fact that we have the characters isolated as they should be, and I like the really cool downbeat ending, but for the reasons I already stated, Dorm That Dripped Blood is a flawed slasher, so even though I really do like certain aspects of it, that score and the fact that it just kind of doesn't get the pacing right really holds it back. But damn, you gotta give it credit for that ending. That ending is on the mark, and I love it when a slasher movie ends on a downbeat note like that. Now, the next honorable mention, it is a career-defining film, in my opinion, from the director. And his name is John Carpenter. And the movie that I speak of is John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing could have been on the top 5 list. The only reason I didn't put it in the top 5 is because I feel like sometimes I'll keep a movie out of that top 5 and just put it in the honorable mention because it's a movie that's just so well known, it's so well loved, that I feel like, you know, putting a movie like Xtro at number 5 is just a little bit more fun and it keeps people on their toes a little bit. You know, I don't want to just put masterpieces in the top 5. You know, I like to throw oddball titles like Xtro in there just for the fun of it. Just like when I did 1981, I had a goofy movie like Burial Ground in the top 5. You know, it's fun to do that. And I know I said that I didn't really have any movies that I really wanted to pick apart and shit on in this video, but I do want to close this video out by talking about a couple movies that I think are just overrated a little bit. First of all, Slumber Party Massacre. I think, I don't know, man. I don't know why this movie has fans. Personally, I like Slumber Party Massacre 2 and Part 3 much better. I also like the Sorority House Massacre series much better. Part 1 and 2. You know, Part 2, Nighty Nightmare, man, that one is so much fun. It's just so entertaining and cheesy. That's what I like about that. Also, Hard to Die, the one that comes after. Those are really fun. I like those. I like that Orville Ketchum character. You know, and there's plenty of good nudity. And, you know, Slumber Party Massacre, getting back to it, it does have good nudity. I mean, if you want to see some good topless scenes, hey, you get plenty of that in this film. It's very exploitative in that regard, but it's just fucking boring. I've always thought that this first film, it's just boring. It just doesn't go anywhere. I don't like the pacing, and it's just a fucking snooze fest. The killer also, very unimposing, very uninteresting. He has no charisma. He doesn't grab you by the fucking balls. You know, nothing about this movie screams quality to me, because it's not that good. The good ones are everything that came after. Part 2 and 3 are fun. 3's got a good dark tone, and 2 is just fucking hilarious. And then check out all the Sorority House Massacre movies. Those are fun too. But Slumber Party Massacre, the first one, it's pretty much a piece of shit. Let's be honest. Now, the last one I want to mention as far as being overrated would be Poltergeist. Now, I'm not even going to get into the whole director controversy. We all know the story about, you know, all the conflicting stories about who did what and all that shit. Who gives a fuck? I mean, personally, I'm a big Tobe Hooper fan. But if I'm watching a Tobe Hooper movie, I'd rather watch Eaten Alive, or Texas Chainsaw, or The Funhouse, or something like that. Hell, I'd rather watch Spontaneous Combustion than this shit, okay? It's just too lighthearted for me, and I've just never really even been a big fan of it. My favorite part is when you see that piece of chicken crawling across the fucking table. And then I also like when the guy goes in and he's looking in the goddamn mirror and he starts tearing his damn face off. That's really sick and twisted. I like stuff like that. I like the real morbid shit. And unfortunately, you get limited doses of that in this film, alright? It's just too lighthearted for me. So, Poltergeist, I watched it a bunch when I was a kid, but even then I wasn't a fan. Even then I had discerning tastes, alright? I was a critic even then. Even then, I knew what I liked and I knew what I didn't. And Poltergeist just never gave me that extra oomph, alright? It never gave me that extra kick in the ass. One more thing I want to mention before I close. Another fun movie from around this time is Boarding House. Now, is it a good movie? No. But what I like about this movie is it brings back memories of putting on like a Paragon tape and you would see the trailer for Boarding House. And just that trailer itself, it's just so lurid, and the shot on video type thing, there's just something about a good shot on video movie that really gets me, you know, because I just get real nostalgic for things like that. As far as SOVs, Boarding House is definitely not one of my favorites, okay? It's very flawed. There's some funny scenes in it, but it's not a great SOV like a movie like Video Violence, for instance, or Video Violence 2, or you know, even Cannibal Campout I'd rather watch. But I'll just never forget that first time. I don't even remember which Paragon VHS it was, but I just remember the first time I saw that boarding house trailer. It was just like, whoa, what the fuck is that? I've got to see that shit. So yeah, guys, I think I've talked enough about 1982, and I tried my best not to prattle on too long about every damn movie. And I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on this year. I mean, 1982 is just brimming with good shit, so I'm sure you guys are gonna have difference of opinion with me on certain films, and I'd love to hear it down in the comment section. Let me know what your favorites are, and you don't have to limit it to just 5. You know, the whole reason I limit it to just a top 5 instead of a top 10 is so that I don't go too far overboard. Because can you imagine if I did a top 10? Then imagine how many I would add afterward. The video would be even longer. So I did my best to keep this as pithy as I could. I'll be doing a 1983 favorite sometime in the future, and I'm going to have a lot of fun with that year. That's the year I was born. And there's some cool horror flicks that came out that year, let me tell you right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I'll be seeing you again next time.